Joshua Miller, how you doing?
What's up, bro? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too, man. I saw that you were moving back to Columbus, and it seemed like the right time to get you in on one of these. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. Thanks for the invite. Let's have some fun.
Yes. So we first met. Uh, let's see here. What was it? Um,
I think it was.
was it 12?
I think it was 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2012. Um, we had both been hired by the Vineyard Columbus
Mm-hmm.
to work in the worship arts ministry.
Yeah.
And let's see here. It was me, you, uh, Noel Shearer, uh, uh,
Gary.
yeah, Kerry Mitchell, and then of course Craig Allen.
Yeah.
And that was I reflect back on that with a lot of fondness. It was a really good time. It was a great team, um, super talented team.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun. I remember doing the. I think one of the highlights for me was the master class weekends.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, bring in some folks, and we'd have a whole weekend of training and learning, and then we'd have some people play with us on the weekend, and yeah, man, that stuff was fun.
Yeah, it was great times, and it was very musical, but also, of course, our mission worshipful.
Yeah, very worshipful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great time. Um, let's see here. So you uh, let's see here. You moved to what? Uh,
I moved to Lancaster, California.
right.
Yeah,
And how long were you there?
I was there for about 3.5 years. Yeah, I think three and a
Mm,
half years. Yeah, so I was on staff at the Desert Vineyard. Uh,
right.
Lancaster's like 40 miles north of LA. So
Mm,
it's LA County, but a 3 hour drive.
yeah. So yeah, right, right, right. So did you plug in very much outside of the church? And
Well, when I was there, um, I didn't plug in that much outside of the church. I was doing a lot with vineyard worship, kind of like nationally with the National
right.
Vineyard. So that was like the bulk of my outside stuff that I was doing if I wasn't at the church on Sunday. But
Mhm.
other than that, not really. Yeah. It's kind of hard to get down to LA and plug in when we've got all these people commuting from Lancaster to LA, so you had to find the right time to commute. I mean, it was like seriously, it'd be 2 hours, 3 hours just to get 45 miles. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the challenge. It seems like they would have worked out something, figured something out to fix that problem. It's always been a really bad uh, driving situation.
I think they tried. There's like some shuttles, you know, that are in Lancaster or in a place called Palmdale, and
Mhm.
you could like shuttle to work, but there's just too many people. I mean, I think it's something like 80,000 people commute from where I was living to LA to work in LA. So it's like,
Right.
man, that's just a lot of people, man.
Yeah, tell half of them folks to live closer.
Right, yeah.
Um,
Well, it's so much cheaper. That's the thing is like living in Lancaster was so much cheaper than being in LA, because I mean we're talking like thousands of dollars a month difference, you know. So I think people would just rather make the drive and you know.
Yeah, you know, it's tough. The West Coast and the East Coast, the dollar doesn't stretch as far. Midwest is obviously where it's at as far as cost of living.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, frankly, you know, I'm from the Midwest. You know, there's like a you know, it's like this kind of every man's town, especially Columbus is kind of like that. Um, I think the downside is sometimes like if you're doing something that really is sort of like on the bleeding edge, there's not really like a place to do that,
Yeah.
you know, and there's not like a, you know, like a, you know, there's not like a setup structure to support that kind of,
Yeah.
you know, art or that kind of
Yeah.
thing in the Midwest, and which is one of the reasons why people they move to, you know, either out west or in particular they move east.
Yeah.
But I always told myself, you know, I nah, I just I can't do it. I can't do it, man.
Yeah.
I want to see grass, and I want to have a house that, you
Yeah,
know,
man.
that actually has some square footage, and, you know.
Yeah, there is a trade-off. I mean, because I miss the beach. My kids, you know, like every other day are like, "Can we go to the beach?" And I'm like, "There is no beach. There's no beach to go to. I'm sorry, we moved way too far away." And like the disappointment on their face is amazing. But yeah, I mean, there are some parts about it that's really cool. And of course, we just had some really good friendships and stuff while we were there, so that made it a little difficult to leave. But ultimately, this felt like coming back home was the thing to do. So,
Yeah.
so we ended back. Yeah,
Well, we're glad to have you back, man, and
it's good to be
we'll
back.
have to, yeah, we'll have to collaborate on some stuff. You know, I always have some ideas, but
Yeah.
it's good to have you back.
Yeah, man, it's really good to be back. I'm not pumped about the weather, but you know, seriously, it was like this week, or when was it? A couple weeks ago or something. It was like, you know, 80 degrees, and then it snowed the next day. You know, and then it rained the day after that, and I was like, "What is happening in Ohio? This is the craziest weather out here, man."
Well, you know what they say: if you don't like the weather, then wait a minute. Eventually, you're going to get something that you like,
Yeah.
although it won't be very long.
You'll get it all. Yeah, that's true. That's true, man.
Yeah. But then, like the Midwest thing, like, the like the whole like poisonous snakes and spiders and some of that kind of stuff. That's pretty mild, you know. And then, of course, you know, earthquakes are pretty non-existent.
Right. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but you know,
No, yeah. I
we
mean,
don't have any beaches.
right. I know. No, it was cool to move back and like, you know, have a basement,
Oh yeah.
and to not be, you know, worried about black widows and, you know, that kind of stuff. I mean, we paid money to have people come out and spray like every month because it was bad, man. Those things, they get crazy out there, especially with little kids.
Yeah.
Man, you get concerned. So
Hey, you know, this is man, this is so long ago. I must have been in my 20s, and yeah, I was in my 20s. So I had left the church, and right at the end when I had left the church, I applied for this position. Actually, I really didn't officially apply. They just knew that, you know, I. Thank you so much for watching my video so far.
If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
You know, I may be interested, so they kind of reached out to me, and I was like, okay, sure. It was Willow Creek.
Oh, okay.
In South Barrington, Illinois, and I remember going out there, and you know, it was a couple trips, just to, you know, checking it out, and it was at the time it would have been an interesting kind of move for me because, you know, I went to Western Michigan University, and a lot of the folks from Western, they moved to Chicago, you know, and so there was a lot of people from the school I went to, and so it seemed like it would be good from that perspective. And then, you know, it's a huge church, and a lot of the kind of stuff that they were doing at that time I was pretty into. It didn't end up working out. But as I was looking, you know, looking for a place to live, the bread didn't go as far, not nearly as far, especially in South Barrington. Of course, I would have never tried to live there. I would have lived, you know, somewhere else.
Right.
But the way that this gig was, and we had this, they were trying to set this thing up so that it would work for me. The way it was going to work was, I would have basically played for a weekend of services once a month. So basically, you rehearse and you get everything ready for that one weekend. You know, transcribing music and writing charts and stuff like that, and then for that one weekend. But all of the other weekends, they set me up with this other church, which was, you know, was more like the kind of church that I was used to playing at, was a black church.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for somebody also, and so it was going to be like a joint type of thing. But I had to ask for so much money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know, you can't, you know, what are you going to do? Okay, all of my networks, everybody that I know, all the years that I've been playing music, all of that stuff, I'm leaving that.
Right.
To move here,
Yep.
where I don't know as many people, I don't have the same kind of networks, and everything costs way more. And what it is that you're offering is just not nearly enough to even get me to, I'd like it to at least seem like somewhat of an upgrade.
Right.
You know, and it's always challenging making those sort of moves. You know, one other thing, I applied for a church in oh man, I just forgot the name. It's right across the bridge from New York, Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay.
Is that right? Is that right across the bridge?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'll have to. It'll come to me if that's not the right if that's not the right name of the town. But it was right across the bridge in New Jersey, and it was a church there that I applied for, like this kind of education director kind of position or something. And I was like, oh man, this is going to get me I'll be in New York. And this was like right after I finished college, you know. And I was like, you know, I'll be in New York, I'll be, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, this seems like this would be cool. It was actually the same time period. And, you know, that ended up not working out either. It was the same issue. It was the cost of living. Because it's like impossible to, I don't know. I think folks from there, they have a certain idea of how they can stretch their money, and maybe they know some nooks and crannies or something. Right. But when you're coming from out of town, and you get on Google and you do the math, it's like, wait a minute, I need 4 times as much bread. Is what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, dude, California was very, very, very expensive. I mean, basically, when we were living here before, we were in like a, you know, 2-bedroom townhouse, and we were paying like, I mean, this is 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were paying $790, you know, $790 for a townhouse, 3-story townhouse. we're looking at stuff in California, and we were looking for a similar thing. Townhouse, 2-bedroom kind of a thing, maybe 3. Man, it was like $1,800 a month. I was like, whoa! I was like, that is a drastic difference, for the same, kind of square footage. It was more than double, So
that stuff.
That's always difficult, especially when you feel like when you feel like called to a church or called to a certain place, and you have to discern like all of that stuff matters, especially when you have a family, you've got kids to take care of, all of that. It's like, man, all of those things matter. So it's not just do I feel like I could fit in this place, but is this going to work practically? So,
it's like this is like a sensitive topic. Different churches have different philosophies on compensation, and that's always a challenging feature of it's, as you said, all of this stuff matters, and you still have to survive. You still have to be able to do this stuff you need to be able to do. You have a family, you got to be able to take care of your family. But frankly, if I have to just tell the truth, being able to work at a church and be so sort of open and free about your spiritual journey, your faith, talk, just those sort of, that's like a wonderful, it's like a great thing, in one sense, it seems like it's worth it, but still, since we don't live in heaven, and earth charges rent, it creates some challenges.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that. It's like that thing they tell you. You can't live on love.
Right.
You need money.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's not paying nothing.
Right. But you'll feel really good.
You'll feel good for sure. I don't know how you gonna get some food in that belly, but you feel real good. Yeah, that's interesting.
So tell us about young Joshua. Maybe how you grew up, and maybe when music started to become a bigger part of your life, and then maybe the call to ministry, and maybe some of the twists and turns along the way.
Yeah. So some like pivotal points in my life was my father died when I was 4 in a car accident. And so, we grew up in the church. My dad was a preacher, a singer. My mom was a singer. She played organ. She would preach. And so we grew up in a very musical family. There was always, my dad loved the Winans. And so I grew up listening to the Winans, and that was like a big part of our life. I remember a lot of Sunday mornings of just having, the radio on, and we're just hearing all this gospel music, Shirley Caesar, Yolanda Adams, all that, we're hearing all this good music. And so maybe when I was about 4 or 5, my mom noticed that I was pretty musical, and she noticed that I could clap in time. And so I would be beating on stuff and playing on stuff, and she'd be like, wow, you're actually doing that on tempo. And so when I was about 4 or 5, my mom bought me a drum set, just one of those little kid drum sets. And so I started playing around on that, and then I would go to church and play around on the drum set. We had a lady at our church who played drums pretty regularly, and she would just show me little things. I would sit by her and watch her play, and so as I got older, when I was maybe 8 or 9, my mom remarried, and we moved from Chicago, which is where I'm from. We moved from Chicago to Atlanta. And so my stepfather was like, hey, I feel called to plant a church. So we went and planted this church in Atlanta. And so my family was everything. We were the ushers, we were the greeters, we were the people taking up the offering, we did worship, we played music. So that was kind of the intro for me of really digging into like music being a part of who I was, because my mom would have me get up and sing. My brother and sister would sing as well. And my mom, you know, like, I think like most moms in the 90s who noticed their kids can sing, try to make us a group. You know, she was, she called us the Miller Singers. You know, that's very original. So she calls the Miller Singers, and we'd like, I remember us going to a few places in like Tennessee and Mississippi, and Alabama. We were like traveling, doing some singing stuff at these different churches, because people were like, oh, this little 8-year-old boy singing, and you know, it was like super cool. So I got really invested in worship, and at that time we didn't have a lot of musicians, so we were just playing, you know, we were just playing to the instrumental tapes. You know, the Fred Hammond had these little instrumental tapes you could just buy at the Christian bookstore, and we just play that and we'd sing to it. It's basically like, it's like Loop Community or Multitracks back in the day, you know, except there were no cues, there were no click, there was none of that. You just play to the tape, you know. And so that was probably the place where I really started to kind of cut my teeth with what it was to like lead worship and being in front of people and doing all that. And then somewhere around 11, after doing that for a while, I was highly involved in church and wanted to stay in church. But then I started seeing some discrepancies with my stepfather, he was like one way at church and he was a different way at home. And I noticed it. And I remember this one particular day where I kind of called him out. And I literally called him a hypocrite. You know, which, thinking about now, I'm like, that wasn't a good idea. You know, I'm 11-year-old kid calling a grown man a hypocrite, you know. That would be offensive to anyone, right? But still, it was true. And I was like, bro, like, I mean, I didn't say it like this, but I was like, basically, you're talking about all this stuff at church, but then you come home and I don't see any of that. Like, you don't do any of that stuff. And so he got mad, and from that point on, we just started having a lot of conflict. And then one day he was trying to, like, you know, spank me back in the day, you know, using belts and all that kind of stuff. And I ran from him when he was trying to spank me, and or whoop me, as we would call it. And when I ran from him, he came after me, and he grabbed me by my neck and dragged me back into the room and just started hitting me with his belt. And for some reason in that moment, my heart just went super cold, super dark. And I was just like, I just yelled at him and I said, "You're not my dad. You are not my dad." And he was like, "Oh, that's how you feel?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I left the house, went to my grandmother's house, who lived across the street. This is Atlanta, in the South. And so went over there, and I literally like grabbed a bat because I was about to go back over there and I just wanted to hit him. And my mom pulled up and she saw me in the street with a bat, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I just started crying as she went in the house and started talking to him, and they were yelling. And in that moment, I remember thinking, if this is what church people are like, And if this is what being a Christian is like, I want nothing to do with it. And I want nothing to do with God. And basically, in that moment, I just completely turned away from God. It wasn't that I didn't know that God existed. I knew he existed. I still believed in him. I still had this fear of God or reverence for God, but I wanted nothing to do with him. And so at that point, I just started doing all of the things that I knew was against what I had learned growing up, being raised in church, you know. I was 11 years old, started skipping school, started drinking, started smoking, started partying, got involved in a gang, you know, was in and out of juvie, expelled from school. Like, all of these things started happening. And I'm giving like a real quick kind of overview. And then, so that went on for about 4 years. And then when I was 15, I had a friend of mine who had this crazy experience where he was doing some drugs and kind of lost it. And he went to this church and they were praying for him, and he felt like Jesus had delivered him from this addiction that he had. And he came back to school and he was like talking to me about it and stuff, and I was just like, dude, I want nothing to do with Jesus. I was like, don't talk to me about Jesus. I don't want to hear it. And so he would get high with me, and we would get high, and he would just talk about Jesus. And I was like, after a while, I was like, bro, like, these two things don't go. Like, you can't you can't be sitting here getting high with me and talking to me about Jesus. And then eventually I told him, hey man, I'm not hanging out with you anymore because you keep doing this, you know. And it wasn't long after that I was getting high with some friends, and I was next to this lake, and I just started thinking about Jesus. I mean, and I'm thinking about all the stuff that I had learned in church, and all these things are coming up in my mind. So I started talking to my friends. Same thing he was doing to me, I was doing to them. And they basically were like, bro, get out the car. We don't want to hear this. And so I get out the car, and I'm standing there, and it's like there's this lake. And it's beautiful. Like, the moon is out, the wind's blowing, the lake is glistening. I mean, it's like a beautiful night. And all of a sudden, the text in Romans 1 pops in my mind, where it says that we are without excuse, that when we look at nature, we see that there is a God.
Yeah.
And I just, in that moment, I remember being very upset because I knew that God was making himself known to me again. And so I basically kind of lost it. You know, it was just like, I'm going to do as much stuff as I can do, you know, because I knew it. I knew God was like coming after me, you know. And so anyway, fast forward, I ended up giving my life to Jesus like maybe, I don't know, 5 months after that happened. And during that time, like, musically, I was still doing a bunch of music stuff. I was rapping, I was making beats on my little Casio, you know. I was doing all this musical stuff. I was still singing, you know, but at that time I was like trying to impress girls and like trying to sing, you know, Jodeci and, you know, Boys to Men and, you know, love songs and stuff. And then I eventually gave my life to Jesus and then got back involved in the church when I was 15. And then, yeah, so that's a lot, I know.
Oh no. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
You know, one thing, because everybody goes through stuff, and when you're in the middle of dealing with stuff, and it's nice to know, it's good to know that others have been in maybe not exactly the same kind of situation, but you know, the human condition is such that we sort of create issues for ourselves. We inherit stuff,
right,
but then we create stuff also. And it's good to hear that other folks have climbed out of that.
Yeah.
You know, some I don't know, sometimes, okay, I mean, let's just consider like the pandemic we're in right now. One of the things about the pandemic that is frustrating and is a struggle, been tremendously destructive to musicians and people in the service industries who have been dubbed as non-essential. But for the fact that we don't know what the end is, or how long this is going to last, or if it's going to last, or is anything ever going to be the same, and all of these big questions, it makes it worse. It makes it worse. So thanks for sharing that, because it's a powerful testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I'm grateful. It's not like all the time that I think about it, but there are moments where I remember, or I realize, like, I could have been in a much different place right now. My life could have been very different if the Lord had not come after me, had not chased me the way he did. And the funny thing was, like, I was super, like, hard-headed about it. Like, I was trying to run away from him. Like, I was trying to get away. And he was still very much so, pursuing me, coming after me. So I'm really grateful. And I think it's encouraging for people who are in the midst of, kind of maybe some destructive behaviors or some hard situations. Like, I was actually thinking about this earlier today. We've been painting our house, and I've been listening to a song. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking about how no one is too far gone. No one's too far gone for God to get them, for God to get their attention and to change their life. And there are some other people that I know as well who, like, if you heard their stories, you'd be amazed at, like, the kind of person that they have become. And so some of that train of thought made me think about, like, just kind of some of the stuff that we're dealing with right now with racism and all that kind of stuff, of, like, even when people do wrong, I think to, like, take someone's life, even if they are a criminal, to me is such a hard thing for me to think about, because I used to be that person. And I just think about what would have happened if someone decided that since I was in that moment, I was not redeemable. I was not able to come out of that, And so for me, I'm like, man, people need a chance. People need a chance to rehabilitate. They need a chance to become, whoever they might become outside of their drug addiction or their issues or their upbringing. And so that's the part for me that, like, even in this moment that I wrestle with, of, like, man, how can we help people, like, realize how much more they have, how much more they are worth than just these things that they might be attached to, So anyway, not trying to get super deep, but
yeah, oh no, that's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for. So I'm a third party guy. The Democrat Republican thing, I think, at least for the Black community, has shown itself to be jointly culpable in our struggle. And it is it's interesting, the sort of gamesmanship, the back and forth, the I mean, you used the term earlier, hypocrisy. It's just at such a high level, and you know, and there's lots to go around for everybody. You know, I was thinking about this. I think the left frequently gets, you know, they get tarred with the, you know, cancel culture, and there's a number of things that we usually look at the left and say, hey, see, you guys are being hypocrites about X, Y, and Z. And the right gets, you know, you're being hypocrites about X, Y, and Z. One thing I was thinking about is kind of an interesting thing. And my buddy, I do a show with a buddy of mine named TK Coleman. It's called Thunder and TK. It's on Revolution of One. And we get into all kind of spicy topics, politics and culture and music and arts and all kinds of stuff. It's a really fascinating conversation. He's one of the clearest thinking and most articulate and clearly expressing person that, you know, you'll ever meet. He's a preacher's kid. And one thing he was mentioning to me was that the right tends to criticize or tends to point out compliance as an issue, as the issue that causes a lot of these, you know, brutality or, you know, someone getting killed by officers. To say, if you would just comply, you know. Now, part of that I can see, and I got the same talk from my parents that most black kids, especially boys, get. Whatever the cop says, you just do it. We can talk it over after you're safely back at home. You don't mess around, right? But if you start talking about, now I'm saying this, I'm a gun owner. I believe in gun rights, all of that. I grew up with guns. I grew up in the country, target shooting and all kind of stuff. But whenever you say something like, you know, about assault weapons, which is a really nebulous term, by the way. But if you talk about, in particular, like AR-15s or something, like I have some buddies that own AR-15s, right? But if you say, okay, well, what if the government decides to make those illegal? What do they say? They say, I dare you to come get my guns. That doesn't sound like compliance.
Right.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So on the one side, you're saying that just compliance. But on the other side, you're saying, I'm not going to comply. Right? So, but there seems to be like this, one thing that lets you know that the real national religion in the United States of America is politics. Now, think about this last election. When, can you remember, was it okay for you to aggressively proselytize? Go to Walmart and just start grabbing people and say, hey, you need to get Jesus right now. And if you don't get Jesus, something's wrong with you. What's wrong with you for not having Jesus? Right?
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
We immediately know that that's wrong. Everybody's turned off. Actually, Christians are even turned off by that, right?
Right. Yeah.
However, when somebody says, you better vote, and if you don't vote X, Y, and Z, you know your ancestors died for you to be able to vote. So you have a responsibility to vote. You better vote now, you know?
Yeah.
Nobody and people have no issue with just pushing that stuff. And what's terrible is it's a seasonal thing.
Seasonal religion.
It's a seasonal religion because it only happens every 4 years.
Right. Yeah.
Right? They're not telling you contact your representative. They're not telling you become, part of the process, become the change that you want to see in the world. They're not saying any of that kind of stuff. That stuff's too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just saying the punchy stuff.
Yeah.
Go vote right now.
Well, that's the stuff that actually brings change. That's the stuff that actually
Right.
will change a system or change the way people do or see things. And so I mean, it's that it's that thing of like when I remember back in church where stars. I remember back in church when people would do what I now know as general words of prophecy, right? Where they basically, just kind of, the Lord wants to bless you. The Lord wants to take care of your needs. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I know that. Like, I know he does. I know the Lord wants to do that. Like, anybody can get up and say, that the Lord wants to do something for you, but it's not like, again, I'm making the connection to like, it's this kind of like, what feels like wizardry, this is, I'm a real prophet. I got the stuff,
right.
Confusing.
Right. Like you're connecting it to like the thing where, like this supposed clairvoyant, they're able to, oh yeah, you have an uncle with the first first letters M, and you like all this stuff, and he had a pet at one point in time in his life, and that pet, that kind of stuff. It's like, dude.
Like,
but if you're there for the shenanigans, it's like, hey, you're all in, so you just believe whatever they tell you.
You get sucked in, and you don't think clearly about other things that happen in scripture or other other ways of living than just, I think it was one of the things that drew me to the Vineyard was like, I grew up in a holiness church where it was like very, very strict, and there was a lot of emphasis on, just kind of like the Spirit, like the Holy Spirit. Well, it was like, for instance, you got an issue in your marriage. You need to fast and pray. Your kid's acting up. You need to fast and pray. Invite the Spirit. Let the Lord come and, ask the Lord to come and do. It wasn't like maybe you need counseling. It wasn't like, maybe the way that you handle your finances is affecting your marriage in a way that is creating some problems, And so I think it was just this, like, it was one-sided. And I think one of the things that I loved about the Vineyard was when I came in, there was this kind of understanding of both and of like, hey, we don't just take, prayer and reading scripture and fasting, but we also think about, are we making good decisions? Like, are we doing things that are helpful and beneficial for our families, for those around us, And so I think when you start to actually think about more than just what, and I think that's the kind of what I feel like with the whole wizardry thing is like, there is this like, hey, pay attention to this. Don't think about any of this stuff. Just pay attention to this one thing. And that's right. All you need to worry about. When it's like, no, we can't just focus on one thing. We have to be holistic and think about how all of these other things play in our decision making and impact what we do, So anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. The both and concept is a that didn't originate in the Vineyard movement. That's a old Christian conception. This both and concept idea, And then this idea that you're talking about as far as there are practical miracles.
Right.
You know, it's a practical miracle could be it's just something, a sound piece of advice, a sound wisdom that's, you know, that from putting that in, putting it in place and actually acting on it consistently, it can transform and totally changes everything, right? So there's these sort of practical things, and if you don't, the kind of over spiritualizing stuff, like all the time, everything is some kind of, you know, and I'm not suggesting that the devil doesn't exist. Of course he does.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But there are plenty of things that we can point at within ourselves as responsible for where we are, than to have to point outside to say, hey, it's that guy over there, in the shadow.
Yeah. Sometimes the devil didn't have to make you do it.
Right.
Sometimes you just did it.
That's right. You already wanted it. You already wanted to do it. So.
But most of the time we need somebody else to blame. And it's easier to do that. It's easier to just say, well, it's the devil, And again, like, I totally agree. I think I have dealt with moments where it has definitely felt like something spiritual is happening. And I've had to be aware of, like, okay, this is not just a moment, where I need to go get counseling, or a moment, where I need to figure out how to make this work or figure out a way forward. But, like, man, I need the Lord. I need to pray. I need to fast. I need to, like, find, ask the Lord to, like, be with me in this. So I believe that stuff. I believe that happens for sure. But I think sometimes people lean a little bit more toward out of the kind of denominational, experience that I had. I saw a lot of people leaning toward it's the devil. It's spiritual. And so we need to fight spiritually, and sometimes it just wasn't that.
I just, growing up in the similar kind of tradition myself, you just wonder if running around the church is evidence of the Holy Spirit delivering you. How come it's the same folks running around the church all the time?
Every week. Don't do me like that. Yeah.
Uh-oh. It's old girl song. You know what's about to happen.
No, it's very true. And I think some people are a bit more prone to certain type of expressions. Like, that's just true. But I think that's the thing that gets me, is like, you don't have to say that it's the Holy Spirit moving on you. You can just say that, like, hey, this feels good and I want to dance. Like, that's cool. We don't have to say, like, that's the Spirit. That's the work of the Spirit on you right now. It's like, no, you feeling like, hey, this is a good moment. Like, I'm excited. I want to praise God. Then go for it. So that's funny though.
Yeah. And I would respect that more.
Yeah.
I think in certain traditions, in certain faith traditions within Christianity, there seems to be this sort of prioritization and primacy, which I can't find anywhere in the Bible, or can I find it in any, it's almost like, where did this come from? But there's this prioritization of, the move of the Spirit in the moment. So the service started, so whatever happens in the service, that is more important than all of the stuff that happened before that. All of the praying, all of the, you know, all of the stuff that happened prior to the service. It seems to me that God is also involved in that. And why is the priority on what's happening during the service and not the sort of view of more of like a more holistic view of this sort of continuum?
Yeah.
You know, it's like the entire thing that is happening, the entire creative process, the entire from beginning to ending.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't find it in scripture where there's an override on everything else. It's not, and I'm not even, I'm okay with us saying maybe there's a little bit more weight during the service and we certainly feel things more. But I'm willing to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it invalidates,
Right.
if it is in such a way to invalidate everything else, that seems like what are we doing here? That doesn't.
Yeah.
Isn't God a God of order?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. It's not the case that one thing is more important than the other. For me, when I think about that, I think about, you know, just I was thinking about this with the whole pandemic, right? About how people have been separate. We've been doing stuff online. It's virtual. It's, you know, and I remember the first kind of in-person thing that I did, you know, there being this kind of weight to the expectation and this weight to like being in the room with people. Because sometimes I think that people, one of the beauties of corporate worship to me is that you are worshiping as an individual together. Do you know what I mean? There's something electric to me about being in the room with other people as you are worshiping. And whether you realize it or not, you are being influenced by the worship of other people. Whether that's making you feel like, man, I really don't want to engage because this person is losing it over here and they're making me uncomfortable. Or
and look, they got their track shoes on. They about to go again.
Yeah. Or that person is creating a moment that's helping you to actually engage and connect with the Lord. You know, like there is something electric about that, and I feel, you know, that there is something to that corporate kind of gathering that feels different.
Oh yeah.
But it does not take away. It does not mean like I feel what you're saying. I think the Spirit of God is able to move and do at any access point, at any moment, at any.
And it's all worship. It's all worship. The entire process is all worship.
Yeah.
It's all worship. So what our lives are supposed to be an act of worship, right? So, you know, the sort of cliche that you hear preachers say all the time, you know, Christianity is not just about what's happening on Sunday. It's what you're doing on Monday.
Right.
And what are you doing on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday? And I'm going to say the rest of the days too. And Friday and Saturday. All the way to next Sunday, right? It's it's, you know, that whole thing. And I think that's absolutely true. It's absolutely correct. And through the entire week, through every interaction you have with people, whatever your job is, it's all an opportunity for worship, right? It's all worship. I mean, you're worshiping something.
Right. Yeah. And I think there should be an expectation. There should be something that is received and something that we take away as we are swinging back around to that corporate moment where we are together and experiencing the Lord and all that. And, you know, I mean, I think part of when I look in scripture, part of this whole gathering is for us to be able to know what it means to be the church outside of the gathering. You know what I mean? Like it's a place for us to connect with each other, to learn about what it means to follow Jesus and to actually go and do it. You know? So So we
Absolutely.
should not be just seeing miracles on Sunday. We should not just be seeing the Lord move when we gather and worship together. Like, we should be seeing that stuff happening outside of what's happening on a weekend or in a service or whatever. So, yeah.
Yes. Well said. Well said.
Yes, sir.
So you're a multi-instrumentalist. You play. Well, the last time I heard, or I saw, you were playing. Of course, keyboard and drums.
Mm.
Now you played drums before you played keyboard, right?
Correct. Yep.
And then, and of course, you're a great singer, and you're a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about your songwriting process?
Yeah. Well, right now, I write a lot on guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm not a great guitar player. I'm getting better since I play it a lot. I don't know a lot about it, like how to maneuver through. Sometimes I don't know how to play what I'm hearing in my head. Like I hear this stuff and I'm like, I can't play that, But basically, I can play some of the same chord structures on the guitar that I would, some of the same chords I would play on the keyboard if I played on the guitar. For some reason, it's more inspiring. I don't know if it's because I'm not well versed in the guitar, or if there's just something different about the sound than from when I'm playing piano. I think I get stuck more if I'm trying to play through a song on keys, if I'm trying to figure out something on keys. But most of the time, if I pull out a guitar and I start playing, like, the writing just kind of comes. And recently I've been writing a lot with, so Vineyard Worship has a partnership with Integrity Music. So I've been writing with Vineyard Worship and some folks from Integrity Music, and just doing a lot of writing, which has been a ton of fun. It's been helping me grow as a writer. There's actually a couple songs that we're working on right now that's going to be coming out. I think the one of them's coming out in May, so probably in the next week or so. So anyway, what that has done for me in this last year has really helped me to learn a different way to write, to where I don't always have to be in front of an instrument. Whereas before, that was the case. When I would write, something had to be in front of me. I had to hear some kind of music to really get into the nitty gritty of what I was writing. But now I feel better about being able to work through something in my head, or writing something down, or using voice memo, and then going back and like flushing it all out.
Right.
Yeah. And co-writing has been the jam for me, man. Like, I've been majority co-writing for the last year and a half. And it's just been a blast. I mean, learning from different people, gelling with different people. I mean, it's just something about we've been doing everything on Zoom or whatever. So there's something about when you get on a Zoom call and you're just clicking, and stuff just starts flowing and coming out. So, yeah, but my process is weird. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's words, sometimes it's melodies. Yesterday I was in a worship session, somebody else was leading, and I just had this song come to my mind. So I just pulled out my phone, started singing it while they were leading worship, and I'll probably just take that voice memo and then just start working through it, look through some scripture, see if there's something there, and go from there. So
it's interesting, I've asked this question of a lot of great, composer, arranger, songwriters, and seems to be a pretty individual kind of thing.
Mm.
I remember when I was, when I was a kid, I don't know, 14, 15. I would routinely wake up in the middle of the night with a song in my mind.
Mm.
I was just hearing a song, and then I would go downstairs and I would just start figuring it out.
Oh yeah.
And that happened often. And that may seem like it's a good thing. The problem with that is that when it doesn't happen and you don't have another way to think of a song,
Yeah.
Another approach, then it can cause issues. Plus, it can cause you to sort of, without realizing it, to sort of question the veracity of songs that you write in a different way.
Mm.
Are they less inspired? Are they less,
Yeah.
what they, what is intended or whatever? Are they just contrived? They're just things that you just figured it out, but there's nothing really to it,
Yeah. I woke
and
up. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say that like I have had that happen to me over the years, and most of them I don't remember. I'll have these songs in my head. I'll be asleep and I'll be dreaming this song. I've had dreams where I've been full on playing in a band, like just singing, jamming, and I'll wake up and I'll be like, no, like that was amazing. But I did last year. That happened to me one night, and I remembered the song. And I got up. It was like 3 a.m. Got up, went to my like studio room, started flushing out this song, and the song is called "Better." It's on Vineyard Worship's Facebook and YouTube or whatever. But this song was the song that came out of when I heard and saw about George Floyd passing. And man, it was just like it just struck me so hard. Like I didn't know that even internally that it had gone that deep into me, And I woke up in the middle of the night. This is like 2 days after. I woke up in the middle of the night singing this song. I'm in love with all humanity. The colors of the world are beautiful to me. And I was just like, whoa. And I went to my room, started writing it out, and then called my buddy Gino, who's in Chicago, and was like, hey man, got this song. What do you think about it? And we just back and forth started voice memoing each other like, hey, what if we do this? Or what if we change that? And like 2 days later, it was like, okay, I think this song it's done, And so, yeah, it's out there in the world.
Yeah, that is it's good to know. Misery Loves Company, that you've also had several dreams with music that you could not remember.
Yeah, bro.
When you woke up,
it's devastating. It is devastating because you always think that they're amazing,
Oh
like,
yeah,
that was an amazing song, and why can't I remember it? Like, dang. Like shoot.
Yeah. I interviewed yesterday. I interviewed Alexa Tarantino, and she's a great saxophone player, and she's a composer and arranger and stuff. And we were talking about the sort of compositional process and everything. And that episode, I think one of the things we discussed in particular was romanticizing composition. Or the romanticization of composition, and I think sometimes people, they get this idea that I mean, it can be magical and inspired at times, but most of it is kind of just like follow through and kind of slogging through.
Yep.
You know, and often is the case that maybe some of your initial instincts sort of get supplanted by you know, other folks' idea, especially if you're writing in a team, or if you have a partner, or just because you just realize that doesn't actually work once you actually get under the hood.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is super valuable for musicians that I tell people on our teams, man, the difference between you and some of the best players is that they practice. They keep going. They keep learning. They keep growing. They're not satisfied with just going, I can play an A flat. You know what I mean? Like, okay, great. Like, but can you play an A? Can you play in G? Can you play an F sharp? And it's not so much. I mean, some people really are just super talented and can just pick up anything, but the majority of people really work at it, and like have to figure out how to make. It's the same thing with writing. It's like, man, you gotta put some hours in. You gotta be willing to make some mistakes. And like vocally, like when I'm singing, most of the time when I'm singing publicly, I'm not making a lot of mistakes because I practice privately and I make tons of mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes when I'm singing and I'm trying to figure out stuff and I'm trying to go, hey, what am I going to do right here? How am I going to make this feel? How am I going to sing this or do this part? But there's a lot of repetition involved. And I think that helps a person to become. I think I've grown as a writer in the last year and a half because I have been writing so much. It's just been constant, and so it's just helpful to stay consistent and disciplined with it if you want to get better.
Yeah, the great trombonist, he played on what was it, Saturday Night Live. Steve Toure. He's also a fine composer and arranger, and his process was to write something every day. So he would have a period of time where he just writes something, and it could be nonsense or it could be gold, right? And he would have all these segments of things that he had done every day, and then over time, then you start to see how some of these segments can fit with other segments.
Yep.
And getting yourself into a that sort of grind, you'll be amazed at what can come out. I did this thing, well, let's see, I guess it started in December of, oh my goodness, it's so hard to keep track of stuff. Okay, yes. It started in December of, no, it's not, it's 2021 this year. So it started in December of 2019 and it went all the way to December of 2020. And I was playing I call it Hot Licks. I did this thing it was on Instagram. And so whatever the instrument was, I played something every day. And so for the first about 50 of these, I could kind of like, you can kind of go on inspiration. You can kind of, you just kind of make it happen, right? But then what starts to happen is it's like, okay, I really need to have more of a routine with this. Yep. And so I was coming down at the same time, to do it, and I started to get into this rhythm. I did that 366 days in a row. And I learned a lot about myself, and whenever you're trying to, because the stuff was not orchestrated, it was stuff that I had to think of in the moment. You know, so I was trying to cultivate this capability. I had some other reasons. There were some external reasons why I was doing it too. I wanted to show my versatility. I wanted to have some more content for my Instagram, you know. So I had some of those kinds of reasons. And after you've been doing it for, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 of them, now it's like everybody expects you to do it. So then you have this like, so now there's like this sort of external pressure to, okay, now you got to actually follow through and you actually have to do this.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, I only said that to say that just the consistency, you know, consistently doing something, you'll become more efficient at it, and then you'll start to recognize maybe where certain deficiencies are, and then you can try to work those deficiencies. You know, I like the thing that you said about you don't make a lot of mistakes when you're performing, or and I know that in certain Christian circles they don't like that word. I don't have an issue with that word because I don't think that there's anything inherently non-Christian or something about it.
Right.
Like it's okay to perform so long as you understand who you're performing for.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so then it's okay if I'm treating everything like an act of worship, then and I'm thinking of this thing as being this vertical thing that's happening all the time, then a performance vertically, I don't see the problem. Now, if I'm trying to impress the girl in the front row,
right,
that is not my wife,
right, then
that might be that might be the right stuff.
Yeah. No, when I feel you, because I mean, for me, when I think about that, I think, man, I think part of my job as a worship leader is to help people connect with God. That's kind of like the thing that I'm thinking about is God to people, people to God. Yeah. If I'm doing all kinds of mistakes and doing all of these things,
it's distracting.
Like I'm distracted. Like who's coming back? You know what I mean? Like no one. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are as a worship leader, musician, whatever. No one wants to just come and listen to you try to figure it out while you're up there. You know what I mean? Like, part of our job is to help people connect. And some of that means that we need to think about what we are giving away, what we are presenting, what we are doing to help people to do that. And so, I mean, it's like the performance word is a taboo word, you know, that people don't want to, you know, use that word at all. But like, yeah, there is an element of, dude, you're on a stage, there's lights, there's people watching you. Like, I mean, it's not, you just have to know that that's true. I mean, my thing is like, I don't like it when people say, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but it bothers me sometimes when people say, "Oh Lord, would you make me invisible?" You know what I mean? It's like such a like, to me, I'm like, dude, that's not gonna happen. You're not gonna be invisible. I understand the heart behind it, but the question is, can you use that visibility well and help people connect with God? Like, it's not that I need to like actually be Jesus when I see people. It's that I need to point them toward him. I'm still who I am. I'm still the person you are relating to, but I'm helping you. I'm pointing you toward Jesus. I'm not here, guys. I'm not here. Don't see me. Don't see me. You know, it's like, no, I'm pointing you toward Jesus, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. You don't have to be invisible.
And I think it is the case too that sometimes when people say that, they I think there's some cognitive dissonance there, because I think they realize that they're asking for something that's not possible, but maybe what they want is that there's something transcendent that occurs that surpasses or makes them less of the focal point, or something, But I always cringe when I hear people say that too. That's always been one of those. It's like, yeah, it's okay for God to use you and your personality and the way that you look and the way that you sound and your proficiency on your instrument, your proficiency as a singer, your songwriting capability, everything about you. It's okay for him to use all that stuff for his purposes. That's all right.
Yeah. I think it's a fear of, because I remember it's that fear of being prideful. It's that fear of like taking on something that belongs to God, trying to take the moment. So it's like this, hey, like make me invisible. But to me, it feels like the wrong kind of prayer to be praying. It's like the question or the prayer is like, Lord, would you show me or teach me how to consistently give this back to you? Because it's honoring to God when we use our gift. He gave it to us for that purpose. Like, he wants us to use the gift, but he also wants us to give the glory back to him. He also doesn't want us to take it for ourselves. And so I get what people are trying to say when they say that. But I think there's a deeper thing that if we don't recognize that, we'll keep praying this prayer that's just like, that feels like false humility. It feels like I'm trying not to think about this prideful thing that's happening in my heart that I know is there. And so I'll just say, make me invisible. It's like, no, like go at the thing that's actually happening in your heart and let the Lord use that,
It's like, don't think about a pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant. All you can do is think about a pink elephant now.
Yes.
You gotta it's interesting, because often it's the case that so as a teacher, often I find that the right approach to get someone to kind of get to the next stage of their development, to sort of get beyond the plateau that they're on, is not to try to reconstruct or to teach them how to do the things that they already can do a different way. It's to teach them how to do something new. And in teaching them the new thing, I'm incorporating whatever the technique or whatever the thing that I want them to gain. So then the student, because certain things become ingrained in a way, and it's like this principle of a vacuum. You can't get anything. You have to let something out to get something in. And if you're just sort of keeping the same stuff in there, and nothing's getting in, and maybe you're trying to tweak that stuff that's in there, you're not going to get very far with that.
Yeah.
Everything's going to get stagnant, stale. There's no new air in there. So letting some new air in there is critical,
Yeah. I think that's why I like playing guitar to help me write. Because I play keys all the time, like I'm always, when I'm leading worship, I'm playing keys. Also, I just remember that you were the one who you sold me that keytar that I have.
Oh yeah, that's right. I saw a picture of you playing that recently. I was like, yeah, I think that's the one I sold him.
Yeah, it is, man. The Act 7. It's amazing. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I like the guitar. It just helps. It helps me get out of a thing that I'm used to, and it's stretching me, in a different way that I think is just stirring up some creativity, to be able to write in a different way. So
yeah, I have this teaching tool that I use, And now, mind you, this is for students that, you know, that are primarily instrumentalists, that are not vocalists at all. And though I sing in church, I don't consider myself a vocalist per se. But that's the idea of singing what you play and playing what you sing. So the voice has a capability of, you know, you can sing anywhere in the pitch. You can bend notes easily. There's all kinds of benefits, right? An instrument like a keyboard or like a saxophone or something. Now, saxophone, you can bend notes, but it's much more cumbersome than it would be for the voice. So the voice would be able to teach the saxophone some things. And the saxophone would be able to teach the voice maybe precision with pitch, certain interval jumps that are not difficult to play on saxophone, but that for the human voice would be difficult, would be challenging to do. Also, the voice does not need to know what notes you're singing. The voice can just sing whatever you're hearing.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Whereas in order to access that on a keyboard or something or saxophone, you got to know what the notes. You got to know what the notes are that you're playing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so there's like this kind of benefit of kind of looking at that from both aspects. Now, it only really works if you're not sort of trying to dumb down stuff to suit the other. You know, so if it's like, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to play this on the horn, so I better not really sing something that's got a bunch of challenging stuff for the horn, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
But that's I think that exercise is beneficial, and I can't remember exactly why I brought that up, but it seemed to relate to what we were just talking about. But that's all right.
You know, it did remind me of I don't know if it was you who told me this or if this just came from, I don't know if you said it or if it was just implied or I just picked it up when we were working together at Vineyard Columbus. But one of the things that was really helpful for me with our teams was basically like, if you can do it 3 times in a row, you probably can.
Oh yeah, 3 times perfect.
Yeah. And I was just like, dude, that's great, you know. And I mean, I've been using that for, you know, the last 10 years, and it really, I mean, it's helpful. It's very helpful, especially in the practice zone. You know, I'm trying to get our people to learn this lick, you know, and I'm just like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it again. Oh, we messed it up. Let's do it. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Oh, we messed it up. Let's do it. You know, it like helps you to like, you just get it. It's great.
Yeah, you know, I you know, that's something that a classmate of mine shared with me when I was working on my undergrad. Scott Robert Avedon, great tenor saxophone player, and he was doing a master's degree actually when I was an undergrad, and that was something that he said that one of his teachers taught him was this three times perfect, you know, and it's not like 3 out of 20, it's 3 times consecutively.
Exactly.
You know, you know, that whole thing. And if any aspect of it is not perfect, it's not perfect.
Yep. Do it again. Yep.
You know, that all day.
Dude, I've had some moments where we've been just chilling on some stuff, you know, because we're not getting it, you know, and it's just like, people are like, oh man, we got to do it again. I'm like, yeah, we got to do it till we hit it 3 times in a row with no flaw. Like, we got to get it, you know. So I'm sure some people still hate me for that.
Hey, well, you can blame me. You can say, hey, you know, you know, you wouldn't have had to do that if it wasn't for this guy.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's his fault.
I'm just,
Here, check it out. Here's his website. Send him an email.
Yeah,
Tell him how
I'm
you don't like
just trying to help you be a better musician. Is all. You know, yeah, that's.
Oh man, we're just getting started, man. But you know, I'm looking at the time. It's amazing how fast that time went by.
Oh yeah! Wow.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have you come back. And I've got a show, a live stream I do on Wednesdays called Thunder's Thoughts. That could be something. Maybe we could collaborate on something on that show too. But bare minimum, seems like need to have you back on this show at some point, maybe in the next few months or something, to continue our conversation.
Yeah, let's get some time to collaborate on some stuff too.
Absolutely. I'm going to hold you to that.
I'm down. Look, man.
Okay.
Anytime Dr. Thunder calls, I'm answering.
All right. All right. Well, God bless you, man.
Bless you too.
And I'll be seeing you.
All right. See you.
All right.